Hi, I'm Jalen.
And I'm Sydney. Welcome to Connected Cultures. This week, I will be looking into news in Australia to see how they are currently handling COVID.
And come see me interview a previous international student from App State, Mel Birch-Inwood.
But first, let's hear from Kayla Montavlo and Mel about Australia's traditions and foods.
Hi everyone, my name's Mel. I actually went to Appalachian State on an exchange back in fall 2018 when I was a student at La Trobe University. So as part of the Culture Crawl for INTAP, which is a great organisation, really great student club, I'm going to show you 4 dishes that we would normally cook for special occasions. Good old Aussie tucker, as we like to call it. These are the ingredients you'll need. We're going to do a barbecue or a barbie. And no, we don't throw a shrimp on the barbie, we throw prawns on the barbie. But we've got sausages, so I'll do sausage sandwiches. Got some steak for steak sandwiches. So I'm going to pop them on. And there's usually a dog as well. Got some onion going on the barbecue as well. So while that all cooks, I'm actually going to show you Vegemite sandwiches. Really Aussie dish, and not a lot of people know how to do them properly. What we like is just a little bit of Vegemite. Now I've got some bread already here, so you do have a generous amount of butter. And then just a smidgen of Vegemite. A little bit more. Okay. Alright, now honestly that's about all you need. You don't need a lot. Now I really recommend fresh bread, so go to your local bakery, get a really nice loaf of really fresh bread from that day. Okay. Alright, and here we have Vegemite sandwich. Easy. Something else that we do, which baffles quite a lot of people, but it's really good and it's great party food. We have these little things here. It's basically little granules of sugar and colouring, so really delicious. Again, you've got your really fresh sliced bread, you've got some butter on there, and all you're going to do, these are called hundreds and thousands, or we also call them sprinkles. So you take your sprinkles and you just lightly put it on. Put too many on, they're going to roll everywhere. Okay, I like to use the back of my spoon and just kind of force it down a little bit, because that way they're not going anywhere. And again, this is a contentious issue, but usually you would cut into triangles. This is always at a kids' party. It is fantastic. Really good Aussie party food. You can see little triangles of yummy goodness. Nice and crunchy, and the butter holds it well together with the bread. So I'm going to put them on there. I'm going to finish this one. Okay, so our steak is really thin, so it cooks quite quickly. Nice and thin. Straight onto a piece of bread with butter. Gonna get some of the onions on top. And now this next step is personal preference. You gotta have some kind of sauce. So we have good old tomato sauce, which you know as ketchup in America. And we also have barbecue sauce. But our barbecue sauce is a little different to what you would expect. It's not the kind of thing we put on ribs or anything like that. It's what we use for steak sandwiches. So I'll show you some. Quite generous. But yeah, so our barbecue sauce is like that. Again, there we go. Voila. Use the sprinkles. And then we have a steak sandwich, one of our delicacies. You can actually find steak sandwiches at a lot of events that we have, along with a sausage sandwich, which I'm going to do for you and have ready for you in a minute or two. So now we're ready for our sausage sandwich. For that, you've got your one piece of bread that's already buttered. Your sausage on a diagonal. Again, the sauce is a personal preference. Now, you can either choose to put onion on the sausage sandwich or not. A lot of people don't like the onion, so they do leave it off, and I'm going to leave it off for this one. But I'm going to go with tomato sauce this time. Some tomato sauce over the top. Then what you're going to do in a triangle, and that is our sausage sandwich. So there you have it. There's 4 different sandwiches that we do in Australia, or sangers, as we sometimes call them. So we've got our good old popular fairy bread, which is for kids' parties and adults as well. We've got our Vegemite sandwiches, staple in every lunchbox, and even for adults, Vegemite on toast. You know, you can use Vegemite for a lot of different things. Got the good old steak sandwich with your onion and barbecue sauce, and your sausage sandwich with some tomato sauce there as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this cooking demonstration of some good old Aussie tucker. I'm going to get back to the barbie and make sure the rest of it's cooked for the family, ready for dinner. Thanks a lot. See you later. So one really important thing I forgot to tell you about a barbecue, it's really important to always have an extra sausage on the barbecue for said dog that was barking earlier. So, not going to give him all of it just yet. Ooh, a little bit warm. I might give him a piece of mine actually. Sit. Good boy. There you go. Got to feed man's best friend as well. So, yeah. Thank you. See ya.
Australia is a country known for many things, from its beautiful sights, amazing animals, all the way to its food. Australia is home to roughly 25 million people. 25 million people who get to experience its unique beauty. Things such as a beautiful coastal sunset that feel almost magical. A coast that even during the day has so much to offer. On Australia's coast, in Victoria, you can locate the 12 Apostles. This is typically a very popular tourist destination. The 12 Apostles are limestone columns that were formed by erosion over the years. And because of its constant erosion from the waves, what started as 8 columns has now dropped to 7. Even still, people from all over the world come to explore this natural attraction. The same way they come to explore the many different destinations and attractions Australia has to offer. Some of these destinations include Whitsunday Island or Whitehaven Beach. Whitsunday Island is actually part of a group of islands located between the coast of Queensland and the Great Barrier Reef. Whitehaven Beach is a really popular attraction because of its unique white sands and light blue water. But Australia is more than just beautiful beaches and coastal sunsets. So what else does it have to offer? Well, Australia has several mega cities filled with history, culture, and the arts. One of these cities is Sydney, a place with countless museums, cafes, amusement parks, and other attractions. Here you can find the Sydney Opera House and Sydney Harbour Bridge. The Sydney Opera House is not only a performing arts center, but also a work of art itself that took nearly 14 years to complete. The Sydney Harbour Bridge, another beautiful landmark, took 8 years to build. Both are a sight to see both day and night, and were created with a distinct architectural design, making them stand apart. And while these are amazing examples of Australia's man-made beauty, let's take a step back and look at the natural beauty that Australia has to offer. A place where things are a little more quieter, in the peaceful open countryside and national parks. This is a vast part of Australia that offers a nice getaway and some great hiking. Visitors can come to the Blue Mountain National Park, where the Three Sisters can be found, or the Grampians National Park to find hiking trails, beautiful waterfalls, and see some native animals. Speaking of animals, Australia is known for its large population of wildlife. Animals such as the kangaroo or koala are marsupials that are native to Australia. And these are animals we may already know, but Australia is home to the kookaburra, echidna, and emu. All of these animals are either native or endemic to the country, and are unique in their own way, similar to some of the food that can be found in Australia. Because you can't mention Australia without mentioning its food. And their food is just as bright and exciting as their country. First we have fairy bread, an iconic Australian recipe. Fairy bread is simply white bread and butter covered in hundreds and thousands, or as we say, sprinkles. This is then cut into triangles and served. Next we have Vegemite on toast. Vegemite is a traditional Australian spread that has been around since 1922. Lastly, you can't go to Australia without having an iconic meat pie or sausage roll. These are served at sporting events, festivals, and nearly any gathering. It's a staple for Australians and something they proudly share. Australia is a country filled with so much beauty, culture, and energy. It has amazing cities and a beautiful countryside. It's filled with breathtaking landmarks and animals who roam the land. Australia may be home to 25 million people, but they are not the only ones who can appreciate its unique beauty.
Thank you, Kayla.
Now let's go speak to Mel about education in Australia.
Hi, I'm Jalen, and I'm a host with Connected Cultures. Here with me today is coordinator for La Trobe University, Mel Birch-Inwood.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Actually, I shouldn't say hi. I should say g'day, mate, shouldn't I?
How have things been for you lately?
Yeah, not too bad. Actually, we're very lucky in Australia that life is sort of semi-normal again, and the only downside is that we're still working from home. So I do miss the university campus and the good coffee, and looking forward to getting back there, hopefully in the next few weeks.
Hopefully. Now, speaking of life in Australia, can you tell us more about the education system there?
Yeah, so the education system, and do you want to know like all of it or sort of more the university side?
More of the university side.
Yeah, of course. So for me, I actually completed my Bachelor of Business degree with La Trobe University at the end of 2019. And for just a standard undergraduate degree is usually about 3 years. I know over there you guys do 4 years as a standard. The first one's more sort of, first year's more general, but for us, we kind of go straight into it. My first year was a lot of core business subjects, and then you kind of pick your major almost from the get-go if you know what you want, or within that first year, and then you really specialize in the second and third year. A lot of the obviously health sciences and all of those specialized ones that in education that require kind of accreditations, they might be a little bit longer. I think the longest degree is about 5 years, and they're the double degree with like law and something else. So I have to say 3 years was enough for me. I was happy to be done after that. But no, it's good. And class-wise as well, I did notice a huge difference too between Australia and America. I had like potentially one lecture a week where everyone would turn up, and then we would have workshops as well. Sometimes we didn't even have a lecture, but we would tend to go to class just once a week for each subject, and then we did a lot of work online at home with our homework and assignments, and we had a lot of assignments to do and exams. Our exams are once at the end of semester. I did love the idea of exams throughout semester. For us, we had to learn all 12 weeks and remember all of that for a 3-hour exam right at the end. And it's usually worth about 50%. So it's a big one. That was probably my least favorite part.
Now, going back to what you just said on how students in Australia, how sometimes you all would only go to class once a week. Is that like asynchronous for most of your classes, or are most of your classes online?
Pre-COVID, it was kind of like half and half. We did a lot of our learning management system, the LMS. You guys have something similar too, but we would go through and we would look at any kind of readings that we have to do for the week, any short quizzes we had to do, and we had to do all of that before we went to class. So class was more about reinforcing what we taught ourselves online. And yeah, it was usually a 2-hour class. And the workshops are always like about once a week, but if you had a lecture, you would go to that as well with everybody else. So you could go twice a week, but it depended on your subject if you needed to. Some of mine was just, especially the first year subjects was just once a week, 2-hour class. You do the rest online and homework. It's still equivalent to full time. So we were expected to do about 10 hours a week of schoolwork per subject. because it's technically a full-time load, and we would do 4 subjects throughout a semester.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
And would you say that I know that the minimum requirement here in America for most universities for your course load is about 12 credit hours to be considered a full-time student. Is it the same there, or is there another difference?
And for you, the 12 that's 4 subjects, isn't it? That is, yeah.
That's versus.
Yeah, for us, because this is where I've also got to get my head around the credit points. One subject for us is worth 15 credit points. So a full-time load, well, to do 4 subjects, which is kind of the maximum you do, is 60 credit points a semester. But technically, the university does class full-time as 3 subjects. But you can't finish a degree in 3 years if you're only doing 3 subjects a semester. It's just not possible. To finish your whole degree in 3 years, like my degree, I had to do 4 subjects a semester or pick up a summer winter school option. But technically 3 is full time. And for that, okay, so something else that I find really fortunate with Australia is our government will actually give us benefits to study. So it's called Austudy, or depending on your age, we actually get an allowance to go to university.
Oh,
And to do that, you have to be enrolled in full-time study. So you can't drop below 3 subjects a semester, or you lose those benefits. So
wow.
yeah, I know, right? It's not a lot, but it's enough to cover like the basics, and then you work to supplement.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Speaking of classes, how would you say, I know you just told me about classes pre-COVID and how that all works. How would you say classes have been affected post-COVID?
Yeah, well, the start of last year, when this all sort of happened and it all went downhill really quickly, we actually put our teaching on pause for a week, gave all the students a week off so they could turn it from, and this was only about 2 or 3 weeks after we started semester. So we start semester at the end of February, start of March for the first semester of the year. And they sort of put everybody on a week off and put all of our subjects online that could go online to be taught. And obviously there are some subjects that have lab requirements and things like that that just couldn't go online. So after that, every single subject that could be was taught online. So all of last year, all students learnt from home via Zoom. Actually, Zoom was one of the big things for us, and I think everyone knows how to use that now. So yeah, a few teething problems as well. I know students were struggling. But one of the things that La Trobe University put in place was a grade that's called the V grade. So if you really, really struggled and you failed a subject, you would get a V grade and it would not show up on your transcript. So it wasn't detrimental to any future, studies or employment or anything like that. It didn't affect your overall WAM, which is our weighted average mark. It's our equivalent of your GPA. So yeah, you could fail a subject and it wouldn't affect any of that because of the COVID situation.
Just gonna shift gears here, but let's talk about your experience as an international student.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no worries. What do you want to know?
So what was the experience like?
I loved it. I can go on and on and on about this. So you just like stop me at any time. I even use my experience now in my position to encourage other students to go overseas. But look, to start with, the reason I chose America is that I've traveled a lot around the world, and I've already lived in the UK and I've lived in Canada, and I thought, a student exchange would be the one time I can really live like a local in the US without having to get a work permit or anything like that and go through a whole visa process. So to me, it was a no-brainer. And I love the States. Like I've been to the States every couple of years. I love it. And I had actually been through the Blue Ridge Mountains before on travel. So that was kind of I was honing in on places I really liked the look of, and App State sort of became my number one. And Honestly, it was such a great experience. I chose App State because also it's a small town and I don't like big crowds, big cities. And I wanted that sort of smaller feel. So I love the fact you can just like walk up the street and go up to the bars and, you know, the shops and the restaurants, and everything is within walking distance except for Walmart. That's the bus ride. Um, but I did everything I could. I mean, I really liked, there's so many different aspects of it, like the university itself, getting to meet people, and I love experience on other cultures. So just the college football, like you see things on TV all the time. And in Australia, we grow up with American TV shows. Sorry. So you always see about college life and then you're like, is it really like that? And but the football games were great. I could not understand it. I think it took me to the end of semester to the Sun Belt Championship game before I actually knew what was going on. But the atmosphere was so cool, and the tailgating and everything that went along with it. And homecoming, I didn't understand that until, you know, it was sort of explained to me. And it really is a good experience to see how other people live and how it goes. And I have to say that I was very much a fan of the multiple choice exams throughout semester as my grades. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. So different to what we have to do, but I had a great time. And I even was invited to present in classes about Australia. So it was so fun to share the love of my country with you guys, and share the Vegemite that some people love or hate. But look, see, I digress all the time about this, but the overall experience is something that I recommend to everybody. You know, always put yourself outside your comfort zone, and it's always, you know, driving around areas as well, especially in North Carolina and Tennessee. I can really appreciate what we have here in Australia. I can see where some differences are. I understand how some people in North Carolina may never go very far other than the states around them because there's just not the opportunity to do so. So it really makes you think about how fortunate you are when you can go and do things like this.
Discussing more on Melbourne, what would you say Melbourne is best known for?
Oh, culture. Like there are so many Melbourne's been voted what, like, it's, if it wasn't the most livable city in the world, it's always in the top. And I grew up in New South Wales. So Sydney's the capital of New South Wales, and I would always go to Sydney, and I love Sydney. And I was like, oh no, I'd never go to Melbourne. I hate Melbourne. No, there's a rivalry between Sydney and Melbourne. And then when I got down here, I'm like, wow, I'm never going back to Sydney. This is awesome. Like, there's so many things in the way of culture. There's always like the comedy festival that happens down here. We have a lot of theatres that do musicals, the ballet that's down here. Another thing, one thing that I've started getting into lately is going to drag shows. A lot of the international performers are coming to Melbourne, so I love going out and checking out a drag show. There's just an art and just food. Oh, there's like, Melbourne's known for cafes. You can't walk around a corner in an alleyway and there's not a cafe there. So cafe culture's huge down here. Yeah, I don't know, just like there's so much to do and you're never bored.
Now, for my last question, I know that you've experienced life and living spaces in different countries, different areas, different cities. You you've gotten around, and that's not an opportunity that's afforded to a lot of people. But for those who do, I know there's a guaranteed takeaway. What would you say has been your takeaway from it?
From all the different places I've lived. Look, I think this is a tough one because for me, I'm probably a little bit older than you think, and I have traveled the world, and I'm not at the point anymore where I want to live in dorms. And to be honest, that was one of my big issues with coming to App State, is there were no single rooms, and I was like, oh, I really don't know if I want to share. But in the end, you kind of have to compromise. And it's like the experience of what you're going to do for a few months, is that worth the compromise of sharing a room? And honestly, yes. I had an amazing roommate and she was so great that I never had any dramas. And I was like, okay, this isn't that bad. And I think one of the biggest things I can say is, if you, especially with all different kinds of living conditions, think about what, the sacrifice you're giving for what the bigger picture is, but also to have noise cancelling headphones. That's that's a savior, I think, noise cancelling headphones.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everything that you just shared with us all.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mel. Last but not least, let's hear about Australian news from Sydney.
Thanks, Jalen. Residents of the Greater Sydney area got to enjoy their first weekend in 2021 with eased COVID-19 restrictions after recent clusters gave the country a bit of a scare. Australia has been praised by the rest of the world for its strict handling of the coronavirus outbreak since it emerged in February of 2020. With consistent rates of extremely low infection transmission and deaths, most assumed Australia had effectively beaten COVID-19. However, 5 days before Christmas, a cluster of coronavirus cases broke out in Northern Beaches, a region in northern Sydney in the state of New South Wales. 68 confirmed cases prompted a rigorous 5-day lockdown in the Sydney area that caused 250,000 residents to remain in their homes, exceptions only for work and exercise. Another cluster in Berala, a western suburb of Sydney, resulted in border closings of nearby states and territories, such as Victoria, Queensland, and the Australian Capital Territory. In addition to border closings, New South Wales enacted mandatory statewide restrictions to reduce the risk of coronavirus transmission. The 5-day lockdown was deemed effective, but the strict restrictions remained through Christmas, New Year's, and Australia Day. Stay-at-home orders were heavily advised but not mandatory, and venues such as skate parks, playgrounds, aquatic centers, libraries, and outdoor gyms were not open to the public. The clusters proved to be a big blow to Australia, considering they had largely suppressed community transmission through meticulous testing and contact tracing. Before the Sydney outbreak, almost all domestic borders had reopened for the holiday season, allowing unrestricted national travel for the first time in months. But on Friday, January 29th, borders reopened and tight restrictions on Australian citizens finally relaxed. The decision came after New South Wales reported its 13th day with no new cases of COVID-19 community transmission and updated health advice from Chief Health Officer Dr. Kerry Chan. Residents of Greater Sydney are now able to travel freely into Victoria and the Australian Capital Territory, and on January 31st, Queensland joined the list. Many Sydneysiders hit the road to visit friends and family since the borders were sealed shut during the holidays. Queensland, a destination hotspot, welcomed travelers in the hopes of gaining back their tourism revenue. Up to 30 people, including children, are now allowed in homes. 50 people can now attend outdoor events, and as many as 300 people can now attend weddings. However, all gatherings are still subject to the 1 person per 4 square meter rule. Masks are still mandatory on public transport, places of worship, and beauty salons, but are now optional at supermarkets, retail businesses, and hospitality venues. Chief Health Officer Dr. Carrie Chant said high testing rates were and are still critical to New South Wales' health efforts in identifying COVID-19 cases and preventing the virus from spreading. This is particularly important in areas where we've had recent cases, said Chant, particularly Western and Southwest Sydney. On January 30th, New South Wales posted to their Twitter account saying that the state reports 10,504 COVID-19 tests were administered in the last 24 hours, which brings the total tests administered in the state to 4,621,041. New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian reiterated the importance of testing for residents during a press conference held on Wednesday. The sacrifice and efforts of everyone is why we can ease restrictions today, said Berejiklian. But if the community wants to see us move to the next step, which is advancing to 1 person per 2 square meters, we really need to have the greater community out there being tested. New South Wales predicts it will move to that 1 person per 2 square meter rule within the coming weeks. That's all for news in Australia.
Well, thank you for watching. That's it for this episode on Australia.
Join us next week to learn about Egypt on February 18th at 10 a.m.
See you next week.
Bye.